Did the cosmos suddenly explode into existence from nothing, by nothing, and for no apparent reason? Or were the words of Moses true? For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Exodus chapter 20 verse 11. Do we find evidence for a purposeless, self-existing universe? Or does the very existence of the cosmos point to a creator? Join Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in J. Hall, MS, as we explore creation, the Bible, and science.
And here we are again.
Again.
And I was just sharing before we started that one of the comments on one of the shorts that we did from last week's show was talking about how did we get from divide and multiply, single cell divide and multiply reproduction to male female reproduction over time, and what steps were incrementally happening, and it can't happen. It just literally can't happen. And so someone had commented that, of course, there's evidence. You just need to go to school to find out. And so my response was, okay, can you give me some of the evidence so we can decipher this? I'm open to that. And I suspect I'm not going to hear anything back, because I have spoken with, biology professors that can't give any kind of an answer for how that might have happened. And Jay, what did you say about Dr. Tour?
Well, James Tour, he manipulates tiny molecules, basically the type of technology that you need to try to solve the origin of life question. And he's examined all the proposed methods, and none of them add up. And he has not been refuted.
Right.
Wonder
right.
why.
He even put down like a cash challenge. If you refute him, I will. And no one has claimed him on that. So. It's weird. I don't understand why. If the answer is so simple, just give us the answer.
Yeah.
So with that, we will let you begin, but not at the beginning. And take us on a tour here, but not the James tour.
Ha ha ha.
Uh-oh, what is that? Oh, I got to turn something off. That's the problem here. I got to turn this guy off. Turn that guy off. And now I'll bring this guy up. There we go.
Okay, so this is basically following the track of Dr. Terry Mortensen, who I mentioned last time. I had the privilege to spend a little time with. His background is the history of geology, which I think is very, very key topic, and all of this. In terms of, you have Darwin, but he depended on the millions of years. But the millions of years were the geologists predicting geology and how they came up with that the rocks had to be deposited, very slowly and so forth, which we'll get into in a later session. So to the best of my knowledge, he's the one who has tagged these three passages as Jesus' age verses. That is, what did Jesus say about the age of the earth? So this is actually from chapter 11. In this book, Coming to Grips with Genesis, which is multiple authors by Mortensen and Urey. And I really, really like this book. It's really helpful. And so it's Mark 10:6, and we will look at these individually. Mark 13, 19, and 20, and Luke 11, 50, and 51. And then at the very end of this, we'll take a brief look at some New Testament passages as well. So the logic is, again, it seems kind of simple. But if we all agree that this is the way Jesus viewed it, then of course this is the way we should view it. So the question is what I'm about to explain, is that the correct interpretation of these three verses?
So, okay, and he's pointing back obviously to Genesis in these verses. Did he think this was mytho-history, or did he actually believe these things occurred?
Well, Jesus treated, of course, Adam as a real person in real history, and Noah as a real person in real history, as well as Abraham and David and so forth and so on. So he didn't make a separation between, Genesis 1:11 and the rest of the scripture. He treated it as real history.
Okay, good. Okay, so with that,
And that means Jesus did not unhitch the Old Testament.
Exactly.
He
I'm
did
guessing.
not unhitch from the New Testament. That's
No.
right.
Exactly. And so Mark 10:6 says, from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female, quoting from Genesis. And notice it says that from the beginning of creation, the parallel passage in Matthew 19 says from the beginning. But the reason the Mark 10:6 passage is so special is because it says from the beginning of creation, not the beginning of humanity or the beginning of marriage. It says from the beginning of creation. So that's the key phrase. I'm no Greek scholar, but for those of you that can read that properly, I'd say it as what? Apa arches kateseos. Again, I'm probably not pronouncing it right. But
Well,
from the beginning.
we have one here. Dr. Williams, would you like to weigh in on that?
Apo arches ktiseos. Yeah, it's pretty close.
Thank you. That's right. It's easy for you to say.
Yeah. All Greek to us.
Means from the beginning of creation,
All right.
all things.
So to me, that's like an open and shut case with basketballs up in the air. So it's a slam dunk. And my way of looking at it, again, I've had this position for some time. So this is a cool graphic. There's several different versions of it. So the Master Seminary Journal published essentially this whole same article. There's slightly different versions of it. So the version online is based on the Master Seminary Journal article, and the same thing is the basis of the chapter in the book Coming to Grips in Genesis. So all three of them basically are saying the same thing. So there's a version of this little chart in his article, but this is really nice graphics and everything, and I really like it. So not just Jesus, but and the New Testament would take this traditional view on Genesis, roughly a 6,000 year old earth. So Jesus, say around AD 30, said this. So in the beginning of creation, if you put day 6 on the chart, it's basically where that arrow is. So if I'm reading from Genesis chapter 1 or chapter 2, or say verse 7 of chapter 1, I'm still at the beginning of the book of Genesis. So you can take an analogy like that. So when I say the beginning of creation, it doesn't mean the very first nanosecond when God made light. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So day 6 is still in the beginning of creation. So I don't see any problem with looking at it in that sense. So basically, in the beginning of creation, when Jesus said it, was roughly 4,000 years before Jesus said that. And then if we go with what the mainstream view would be, because some say modern humans came along around 200,000 years. Again, that's wide variation on that estimate. There'd be a number of viewpoints on that. But obviously, the Earth is supposedly, roughly 4.5 billion years. But the whole entire universe, depending on where you go to, might say 15 or 16 billion years. And when they find these distant galaxies, with like the Webb telescope, they have to revise it to even bigger numbers because those distant galaxies shouldn't be that complex given the Big Bang model. So again, how can that make any sense if you take in, say, roughly 15 billion years versus 4,000 years? It's a big difference.
So is.
Okay, so this is the second one from Mark 13, and we can get into this one, and if you have some different views on it, we can get into it. For those days will be time of tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the creation, which God created until now and never will. Unless the Lord had shortened those days, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. Mark 13, 19, and 20. So Mark 13, 19 has the phrase from the beginning of creation. Well, who experiences the tribulation? If I had a rock in my hand here, this rock, it's suffering. It's my pet rock. Oh, it's terrible. No, people suffer. You might talk to your car, give your name, a name, a pet name or something, but it's an inanimate object. So people are the ones who suffer tribulation. So it puts people and some terrible things that are happening, war and famine and this, that, and the other, and puts the two together. So I think the most logical thing is people and the history of people and the terrible things that have happened, tribulation. You go all the way back to the beginning of creation. Of course, there was a flood, But if the water's coming at me and I drown, maybe I'm not a good swimmer, I'm dead pretty quick. But if there's I see my kids suffering and I get some kind of terrible disease, I get Ebola and my death is drawn out, that's terrible tribulation. So yeah, even though the flood happened between now and then, I think that it's talking about all those other things, the mental anguish and other things that could happen when God judges.
Yes.
Okay. So, speaking of inanimate objects and naming them, we years ago, back in our young married days with 2 young children, one of the used cars we had purchased was a very used, very rusted out, like a Suburban. In fact, the doors are so bad we had to put hook and eye locks on it to keep the doors closed. And she named it Godzilla. It was kind of a fitting name for that car.
Sounds like it.
So the one of Dr. Terry Morton's key books is called The Great Turning Point, and that talks about the so-called scriptural geologists. So these are writers in the early 1800s that opposed, say, what Hutton was saying, that the earth has gone on and on forever. We don't know when the beginning was, and Lyell, who was trying to say there's such a slow process, everything takes forever to form, say, the rocks or stalactites and this and that. So Henry Cole fell into that category of what's called one of the scriptural geologists. That group, you'd have to look in that book. It's just called The Great Turning Point. But some had more geological knowledge, some had less. Henry Cole would fall into the ones that had less, but he knew that the scripture wasn't consistent with this way of denying the flood's impact on the world. So he commented on this passage, and this was his comment. Now, is there a geologizing mortal upon the earth who will assert that the Redeemer is here speaking of afflictions experienced by a world of creatures who lived in a mighty space between the beginning and the present race of mankind? So he's saying, can we stretch this way, way, way out to some other vast time period? And he was an Anglican curate and tagged as a scriptural geologist. And I think the next slide, the quote continues. Must not every scientific, his word for a scientist, confess that the Savior is here speaking to the sons of the afflictions of the same sons of men, which have been from the beginning of creation of this world, that is, all the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve. Then here is the creation of man, immediately, manifestly, and undeniably connected with the beginning. So he saw the implication of that, and then you can't put many ages or millions of years between those 2 points. And he said that in something he wrote in 1834, which was roughly the time period of most of those so-called scriptural geologists.
So are you suggesting that we should have the scriptures interpret the scriptures rather than looking to science to interpret parts of the scriptures?
That's exactly right. And when we do learn things like, cultural heritage of how the Jews did things in the past, we learn things from archaeology, where exactly was the pool of Bethsaida and so forth and so on. But the thing is the scripture has to be our ultimate authority, and it does speak to history and geography and this and that. And usually there's some kind of an understanding, like 2 different terms referring to the same thing, and coming up with a harmony of the Gospels. There is a logical way to do it without having to force a contradiction in the text.
Sure. I have an interesting comment here. Asterisk points out 4.5 billion. I remember when it was less than 1 billion. I too remember that, and I have noticed over time, as they find that it's more complex and more widespread than they had originally thought, they have to make it older and older and older to fit their narrative.
Yes, indeed.
Interesting.
Oh, I suppose I should do this way, right? You'd like that one better, I suppose.
Now, this is the third one. So 2 verses from Mark are tagged the Jesus age verses, and this is the third one from Luke 11. So it says, so the blood of all the prophets shed since the foundation of the world may be charged against this generation from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the house of God. Yes, I tell you, it will be charged against this generation. Luke 11:50 and 51. And that's Jesus, of course, referencing the coming judgment of the destruction of the temple, and that did happen in 70 AD. So notice it says the blood. So that says Abel was a martyr. I would say that Adam, he said several things, flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. And so I think you can make an argument that Adam was a prophet in that sense, and a prophet leading his family. You could generalize that in a sense of a leader in the family. But the idea was Adam wasn't martyred, but Abel was. And so was Zechariah. And it's just kind of an interesting coincidence that you get from A to Z. So providential thing to help us remember it easier. So the fact that it goes back to the beginning of the world, again, if you made a chart of it, the beginning and Abel's right here, and then Jesus is, roughly 4,000 years later, it's, it fits to interpret it that way.
Now, does it depend, this is a theological question, does Jesus' reliability in making these statements depend on his being God, or how else would he know to tie these two together and that they're accurately tied together?
I think that's absolutely true, but Jesus, of course, learned the scriptures. He learned, I'm sure, probably had much of it memorized, and he knew that the timeline, from when David lived, roughly 1000 BC or something like that. I mean, he knew roughly the timeline of when the northern tribes were taken away, and when Judah was conquered by Babylon, and so forth. So, I mean, it's not so hard to add up the numbers and put them together that we know this only happened so long ago. And again, the early patriarchs, they're recounted in the genealogy and Matthew and Luke. So I think that was, I would say, is probably common knowledge in his day, as well as his divine perspective.
Right. So he would be a reliable witness, I guess, is my point.
Amen.
As to what he's tying together. Now, you had another little interesting blurb at the bottom of this here. Some place the later chapter of Zechariah, some place it to 450 BC. Right.
And I think that sort of overlaps with Malachi. I'm no expert on this, but the interesting thing is Abel was a martyr, a prophet that was killed, and Zechariah was a martyr. He was a prophet that was killed, because it says the blood of all the prophets. So that's referring to the fact that they were unjustly murdered.
Yeah. All right. Now you have on display a book by someone who some may think is a questionable character.
So yeah, Henry Morris sees kind of creation in almost every verse, and I'll grant you that. So I'm just saying, I don't have this. I'd be extremely doubtful if he misses any of three of these verses, the Mark 10:6, the other Mark passage, and the Luke passage. I would be really surprised if his study Bible doesn't get into this and catch the implications. So what I'm going to lead to is those that who can tell me, a little quiz time, who can tell me what a steel manning is? STEEL manning. Steel manning, like a man.
Steel manning. Oh.
Not me.
Have a volunteer for that?
I haven't heard that phrase.
Okay, it's the opposite of straw man. So when I say a straw man, what do I mean? In an argument and a debate, a straw man.
It's oversimplifying the argument to make it easier to knock down, exactly.
Yes. So the steel manning is you try to give the best side. Like I took the evolutionary biology course. My textbook's right in that shelf right there. Futuyma, Futuyma, a famous evolutionist. And okay, they're saying it's mutations and slowly changing over time. Don, kind of like what you were saying, how's that going to lead to boys and girls? How's that going to happen? But I mean, that's what was taught, and so I got to there's obviously the gene mix and genetic drift and all that. Yeah, all that happens, but it's not going to create a new kind of critter. So that's kind of where we're at.
Cool. Who are these fellas?
Okay, so some of these I'm more familiar with. Mostly it's been in my writing and discussion of creation topics with John Walton, Bruce Walke, of course, listening to J. Vernon McGee on the radio a lot, Warren Wiersbe. I used to work for the concrete company here in Oklahoma City for a year and made the big pre-stressed beams on the bridges. And during my lunch break, I'd listen to Warren Wiersbe. So a great speaker. And see Arthur Pink, of course, familiar with him. And again, Gordon Wenham to some extent in quotes, and then Griffith Thomas. I think I've heard him like on YouTube or something. But anyway, all of these scholars fail to see the implication of these three verses. So if they were truly steel manning, trying to give the best representation of the young earth argument, they would have dealt with all three of those passages. And it's showing that the argument isn't confronted and dealt with so much as sadly ignored. So that was the point of this. And I don't know, y'all may know better than me. I don't know if any of those portraits are accurate. I don't know if even one is accurate. Again, thanks to AI. I just plugged all that into AI and told it to make me a graphic.
It looks like it could be. I don't know.
And there you have it.
All right. Now, I actually heard James Montgomery Boyce. This is interesting. We're in Oklahoma City, and me and a good friend, we heard him speak basically on Christian worldview ideas. That's basically what it was, a series of talks. That's basically what it was on, and how we build a Christian worldview. But it was a few blocks away. It might have been in St. Luke's Methodist, which is a real famous church here. And he has a venue. It happened to be a convenient venue, which is just so many blocks away from the Murrah building. And but this, when we went to hear him speak, this was actually just a few days before it happened. So it was just kind of interesting. But if you look at his commentary, he actually misses the impact of these verses as well. However, I put Boyce in a different kind of category. I mean, fantastic speaker. If you've never heard him, you can. I guess he's still on the radio. I'm not sure, but I would highly recommend you listen to one of his messages. Just such a fantastic voice. But he's in a special category. He actually favored a global flood, said it had to have some kind of geologic impact, but didn't hold to the so-called flood geology, not the whole ball of wax, and did not endorse the young Earth's view. And that's one of my blogs, and I get into it more deeply there. So some people say, well, look at James Montgomery Boyce. He failed to comment on these verses. Well, that's true. But he's almost like he's coming halfway to the view, I think, which is correct.
Now, that's interesting. Do you have any speculation on why he might have only come halfway to the view? Yeah,
because I think he was influenced by some of the old Earth geologists, which from their way of explaining it, at least if you're not a geologist, this sounds kind of convincing. And we go to the Grand Canyon, well, look at this, and this is how we interpret this rock. And the evidence just seems so kind of like the thing of Proverbs. So the first person who speaks, it sounds good until the second person comes along, and not being very aware of even at the time when he came to those opinions, the creation side of the argument.
Right. Well, and to be honest, for those who are viewing this, there are issues with the young Earth view, but there's issues with the progressive creationist view, and there's issues with the old Earth kind of gap theory view. So all of them have some issues. Which ones have the least amount of issues and are possibly more explainable? To me, that's the question.
Right.
Now, I'm not a scientist. I didn't play a scientist on TV, and I didn't say at Holiday Express last night. So,
no way.
But that's just my opinion for what it's worth. That and $6 might get you coffee at Starbucks.
There you go.
Okay. Now, again, what I'm following is I'm pretty much following tack for tack Dr. Mortensen's logic here. So he did tons of research on this particular topic. So that's Hodge. What is it? Theology, anthropology, and soteriology. And if you've been to some Bible school or seminary, I'm sure you've studied maybe Grudem or somebody. So it has Charles Hodge, John Feinberg, Henry Thiessen, Millard Erickson, James Oliver Buswell, Carl F. H. Henry, all fail to see how Jesus' age verses apply to the age of the earth controversy. So a systematic theology, you might think it might touch on this when it deals with, okay, well, was the flood global, or how old is the earth, or some of these related creation evolution issues. But all of those fail to touch on them. So my main point is that these verses seem to have a very strong point to it, connecting mankind to the beginning. And so the man is a latecomer. So, you have the planets forming and da-da-da, and then finally there's water on the earth. Somehow or another, lightning strikes a pond and the little life forms, and we don't know about where the men and the women came from. That's a mystery. But eventually, the animals in the ocean slowly learned how to walk and are on the land, and then they got bigger and more complicated, and finally we're related to the primates. It's a long string of things. It's not that once we get to people, that's really close to the beginning when the Big Bang. No, it's a big, huge distance. So I think that's something that that they're missing, because they don't come to the three things that Jesus said that seem to be quite clear. At least that's what I think.
Right. So fundamentally, in order to hold a view other than young earth from a biblical perspective, you have to kind of fight with what Jesus said.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Seems to be the case.
Okay. So, and if it is the case that progressive creation is true, then Jesus is not a reliable witness about the creation.
Yeah.
Right.
That seems to me to be a problem. To me, I mean,
the other big problem I see is that Jesus was there.
Well, yeah, there is that. If he created everything, that's
so
what John declares in the first verse of the first chapter of the book of John, that he created it all. So you would think that he would know.
I'm just guessing here.
Who all has seen The Most Reluctant Convert? The Most Reluctant Convert. Who all seen that film about C.S. Lewis?
I have not seen that, no.
Okay. So anyway, there's a section in there where...
I did read the story, though.
Okay.
Close enough.
So there's a section in there where he's discussing with his friends, and they're basically going through the Lord, liar, or lunatic aspect. Right. So the idea is they focus on C.S. Lewis. You can't just say he was a good moral teacher. He claimed to be God. You just can't do that. You got to take one path or the other. And but it's a really neat scene in the movie.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So what about R.C. Sproul? What's his wife's name?
Mrs. Sproul.
That's right. So there you go. There she is. Did you say Vespa?
No, I said Mrs.
Oh, that's it. There you go.
Well, thank you for telling me.
Yeah, that's kind of like Mrs. Hippie. Yeah.
Yes. There you go.
There you go. So Creation and Change by Douglas Kelly. I have it. This is the revised edition. I've read it. I don't have the revised edition, but it's a really good book. He interacts with the creationist argument, the biblical arguments, and it's well written. So somehow or another, that part I don't know, but it came across R.C. Sproul's desk or something, or he read the book and said, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Somehow or another, this influenced them to take the more conservative position, because there was the New Geneva Study Bible, and then I think it's now called the Reformation Study Bible or something like that. So I'm assuming that one might actually interact with these verses. That I don't know. But I used to have the New Geneva Study Bible. I just don't have the new version of it. So anyway, his book, Creation and Change, helped R.C. Sproul accept creation in 6 literal days. And if you may know this, question 9 from the Westminster Shorter Catechism, what is the work of creation? The work of creation is God's making all things out of nothing by the word of his power in the space of 6 days, and all very good. So Presbyterians, I don't know how they can get out of that phrase in the space of 6 days. It doesn't say 6 ages or 6 eons or anything else. And in Kelly's book, he does refer to these verses. And the reason I put a tiny URL there is actually this was on the Ligonier site, and somehow it vanished. I don't know if that's a sign of anything, but I had to pull, almost like the Internet Archive sort of a thing, something like that, to pull up the snapshot of it was in the past. So that's why I put a tiny URL there. And then that's the Amazon link to the latest edition of the book if you want to check it out.
Okay. Oh, my guy.
And we can age R.C. Sproul from that picture. We can do something. Okay, who all has this book, the Geisler's?
Oh, yes.
I do.
There you go. So, yeah, it's good. I've read most of it. I think I mentioned it before, but I went to the International Christian Apologetics Conference in 2010 at Southwestern Seminary in Fort Worth. And basically, I didn't have a discussion with Geisler. I heard his talk. I really like his approach, kind of his standard talk, where he kind of goes through the whole apologetic argument from the ground up. And I sat next when between sessions, I sat next to him and just kind of absorbed his other conversations, but didn't really interact with him myself. But anyway, this fails to connect Jesus' age verses with the case for a young earth. So I think it does maybe deal with if the flood was global or not and similar issues. But for interacting with those specific verses, it does not. But you might think, since it's like this big, that it might. Unfortunately, it didn't. But overall, I have a huge admiration for Geisler, and I'm trying to remember the name of the documentary. But there's a documentary about his life. If you haven't seen that, it's very, very, very good.
Right. In fact, his son was instrumental in getting that made. He's going to be on our show again in a few weeks here.
I think it was called Unqualified.
Thank you. Bingo.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Yep.
That's it exactly. Thank you.
Yep.
Unqualified.
So Geisler was kind of interesting in that he would often say, "I'm a young Earth creationist about 3 days a week." So he had a view, but he's willing to say, "I'm not married to a particular view on this issue."
Right.
My argument is that God created everything from nothing. That's what he stuck with.
Yes.
And he didn't get as involved with the time of when he did that as others might. So
yeah, he kind of steered away a little bit from that, but
I think there's wisdom in that, because
sometimes
we don't have a stopwatch actually, unless you believe Jesus is the stopwatch, because he seems to say this is when it began and this is how they tie together. So there is that.
Yeah, all over again. Cool.
So I guess you want to see what I see, right?
Okay, thank you. All right.
You see
So
what I see?
that is definitely Wayne Grudem and C. John Collins and Don Stoner.
Oh,
so
good.
those pictures are correct, and that's someone holding the earth. Think about the earth and how old it is, I guess.
I thought that little picture looked like David Letterman, but when he was younger.
Okay. So 61 scholars Dr. Mortensen looked at, and there were only these three that gave hardly any attention to so-called Jesus age verses. So that's kind of shocking. And again, he didn't just pick a random 61, but 61 that had some, I guess, were published by mainstream Christian publishers and, had some degree of influence and so on. So that's what I'm saying about the steel manning. Instead of taking the very, very best argument, which is, was Jesus a young earther? I'm saying yes. They ignore those verses, and they're just so convinced by what the biologists, the scientists, the evolutionists, the geologists are saying, and they think, oh, they're a scientist. That has to be true.
Yeah.
Of course. The argument from authority, I think they call that.
That's exactly it. Yes. So now the question is naturally, okay, if Jesus held that view that we would call the young earth view today, or believe in a youthful world rather than extremely ancient world, then we can look at a beautiful water droplet on a leaf. And of course, Adam named the animals. He saw God's creation, and he lived in the best place ever, the Garden of Eden. Let's hear it from the Garden of Eden. Yeah, best place ever. So you can put that on your license plate. Yes. And and water has some fantastic properties. You know, it freezes at the top so the fish can still live, etc., etc. And look how the veins of the leaf are almost like fractals. Fractals were understood actually in the late 1800s, but they didn't get to be a big thing. Some people are nuts about fractals, but rivers have that pattern. Many things do. But they didn't get to be a big thing until we could put computers to it and make some beautiful pictures, which Mandelbrot did in the 70s. And there's an excellent Nova episode on Mandelbrot, Mandelbrot. I believe that's correct. But if you like fractals, that'd be something to check out. So what does Romans 1:20 say? The Apostle Paul writes that people have recognized God's attribute, and it says, ever since the creation of the world, not merely since the creation of people. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even the eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. That's the KJV version. So I'm looking at things, but since when? Since the creation of the world. Right. Who's looking at them? People are looking at them. So again, it connects the two things together, humanity and the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
Okay, this one's a little bit, I see it. Ionos, I guess, age. So let's read it. So this is from Acts 3, and this is the New King James Version. Repent, therefore, and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, so that times of refreshing may come from the presence of the Lord, and that he may send Jesus Christ, who was preached to you before, whom heaven must receive, until the times of restoration of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. So do we want to take that age as it's the age of the prophets, the age of humans? And again, different translations, I think, will put the word age. But again, for the King James translators, or the New King James translators, I guess both of them thought, well, the most logical place to put what age is it? Well, it's the age since the beginning, or since the world began. Again, this one's not as hardcore in terms of its argument, but I think it is worth noting.
Yep.
Okay, now 2 Peter 3, that is it's almost like a sledgehammer. How in the world do you get out of it? Because at the end of the world, there it is, where it is right there. There's my globe. It's by fire, destruction by fire. So is it just the Middle East is going to be destroyed by fire? No, the whole entire world, and different people that try to have a local flood. Well, there's mountains in the Middle East. Once you cover those mountains, you're pretty much global anyway. So, I mean, they try different ways to get out of this. And again, that's another AI graphic, I guess, but kind of gets the point across. Oh, it looks like the earth is flooded. Yeah, of course, it's surreal, I guess. Dolly could have done that, I guess. Okay, so in 2 Peter 3:4, we read, they will say, where is the promise of this coming? He promised. Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. So that's 2 Peter 3:4. Again, it's saying what the skeptics are saying, but at least for the skeptics, they're having a basic understanding that ever since people have existed, that everything, and the sun comes up, the sun comes down, we have seasons, every once in a while there's a volcano, sometimes it floods, we get earthquakes sometimes, we get lightning, and they're just the same thing over and over. So they had that perspective that goes all the way back to the beginning of creation, not just at some point when, Zeus threw a rock and they turned into people or something.
Yeah, the word for creation there in the Greek is kysios, which means creation.
Amen. Very good. I learned something. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to please.
Yeah.
So, the 2 Peter 3, I think, is very, very, and also related to the globalness of the flood. Yeah. That's a very, very key passage. But anyway, we can go to the next slide. So, for further study, this is the online version. So it says at the top of it that the original article came from the Master's Seminary Journal. Who's visited or spent much time at John MacArthur's church in California?
No.
No. Yeah, we went there for I don't know exactly how many months, but some time, and it was pretty neat. I never did talk to him. Whenever I saw him, he would pass, like from one building to another, holding his books, and I never saw other people come up to him to talk to him either. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, the article online from Answers in Genesis is called Jesus, Evangelical Scholars, and the Age of the Earth. So a slightly different title than the chapter in the book that I've started with. But there you can look at it online, and the documents, the references, it's all there. And it gets into way, way more depth than what I have done here. But it's essentially getting into the what I just said. I'm basically tracing his argument. And then there's
and this is what that looked like, that article.
There we go, that one. There you go. And so there it is, and it's a good length, and it's pretty meaty.
Cool.
So yeah. All right, and then the other one is from Creation Ministries International out of Georgia, and it's just the simple question: did Jesus believe in a young Earth? So if you're just trying to send something to somebody, here, consider this. What do you think of this? And then you could maybe have further discussion if someone's coming from a different perspective, William Lane Craig or whatever.
There it is.
So just the a simpler article that gives the basics. There again, starting off with Mark 10:6.
Mm-hmm. Yes, short answer.
And then I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with Dave Reeves' ministry.
Dave Reeves?
Yeah, Rives. You pronounce it Reeves.
David Reed, sure.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, I have some things on the Creation Club, but I haven't written on it in quite some time. But if you look up my name, there'll be some things that I've written. So was Jesus a young Earth creationist was an article someone wrote on there. And there he is. And it's, again, straightforward, pretty basic. And I think you'd find it helpful. Again, to send to somebody, say, okay, let's have a discussion on this. If you're not from this perspective, let me know, and you could go further from that. Okay. Are there any questions or discussions or feedback or corrections?
Objections?
No.
That's right.
Won't necessarily be overruled, but entertained. How about that?
Oh, entertained's a good word. Yeah. It's clear as mud so far.
I'm sorry?
I said it's clear as mud so far.
It's clear as mud.
It's clearer than mud.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so I have a question that's only tangentially related to what you presented. It's more a question of, and this is not hypothetical, but it's an opinion question. Why is it that so many evangelicals tend to be not in favor of a young Earth view?
I can only say that from their training, there's so much in the popular culture we get brainwashed. I have like some kids' books over here, and it's the dinosaurs, and they lived millions of years ago. And you get it since you were very little. And the Time Life books, before I was a Christian, they have a lot of science books about the universe and this, that, and the other. And I read those, and it said evolution. Oh, okay. Is that how we got here? And again, I wasn't saved until I was 14. So my church upbringing was more and more, I guess, theologically liberal backgrounds. And I didn't become aware of the creationist side of the argument. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I'm from Oklahoma, but I grew up in Northern Virginia. And actually, it was a Herald camping station. And we don't necessarily know.
Oh, no.
But one thing I would say about him, he was very strong on creation. So like Henry Morris and Dwayne Gish, he would air their talks on his radio station. And then I got connected with the Institute for Creation Research, and I got connected with the Bible of Science Association, Walter Lang. And interesting, Hank Hanegraaff, he was, I think, presented a lot of creation materials in it when he was a young Christian. And at that time, as far as I know, he pretty much accepted the whole viewpoint, and then maybe adapted his view later on. But the thing is a lot of people, they never run into it. They haven't read the Genesis flood or more modern creation things. They've never familiar with Answers in Genesis or visited the Ark Encounter and so forth. But many people have. Some people have visited the Creation Museum and their total view flipped around, even those with a strong scientific background. Basically, from a theology side, they aren't confronting Mark 10:6 and these other verses. And from a scientific side, they're not listening to some of the other arguments that creationists are presenting. Say like that excellent film, Is Genesis History, from the Del Tackett, the guy from the Truth Project.
Right. He does a great job. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, yeah. And so those that I've talked to and observed and had respect for in other areas, what I notice is Hugh Ross has had a big impact on the progressive creation end of things.
Yes.
He's a physicist, right? Physicist.
Yeah.
And he is trying to hold a view that seems to rely on the Bible, but to get around the age of the earth question, he has to sort of help us reinterpret what day means to get there.
That's what he's basing it on, yeah.
Right. So it is true that day could be a period of time, something other than 24 hours. That's true. How do we respond to that? I mean, I know how I would respond to it, but how would you respond to the idea that a day can be an age, and so it could be thousands or millions of years for each day?
Well, you have that repeated pattern, morning, evening, the sequence of the day, and then the word Yom. So this is the first day, this is the second day. And the God that does things in a certain pattern, we do things in a certain pattern. Maybe I'm a construction person and I go, okay, we're going to clean up the place one day. We're going to tear out the wall where the old water heater was another day. And then we're going to put up the sheetrock another day, paint it another day. And so we do things in a process. So it's no surprise that God does things in a process. And the fact of Exodus 20:11, that our work week has exactly parallel to creation week, and that God rested on the seventh day. And that's cultures worldwide have a 7-day week. I think that we have to put it back to the genealogies mentioned in Genesis 5 and 11. And to me, that connects it, that you can't put these many thousands or millions of years into the word day.
Okay. So are you saying then that a 6-day work week is not 6 long periods of time of, say, 1,000 years to 2,000 years each that we have to work before we can get a rest break?
I'm thankful that is not the case. Yes.
A long way to retirement, man. Whew.
A long way to retirement. Yeah.
Sure.
What was it? The Egyptian or the Jews, the Israelites were in Egypt. Was that 400 years? That's a long time.
That's a long time. So go ahead.
I don't know if you guys already touched on this or something, but kind of going with the whole talk about what does it mean, a literal 6 days or whatever. How does this kind of tie into the Big Bang, the idea that the universe exploded and stuff? Because I personally hold the view that the Big Bang can actually kind of work with the Genesis account and be another way of kind of describing how God could have exploded everything into existence. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you have to take the day 4 when the stars were made, and the sun and the moon, and of course the light in the beginning could be God's light, or God can just go like that, and there's a bunch of photons flowing in the right direction. So once you have something spinning and the light's coming from this direction, you're going to have day and night. That's a fairly simple concept, and it's not like they were behind the clouds or anything. Those answers don't really make much sense, and the whole evolutionary concept of the order of everything doesn't fit the Genesis idea of when the plants were made, and you have the birds and the water creatures made on the same day. and in other words, all the events don't line up, and so you have this gaseous thing, and it kind of coalesces and it cools off, and water comes later. Whereas in the beginning, God says there's water. So some creationists have theorized, because you could take water to the plasma state, and then it could possibly form other elements. That's, again, I would say that's speculative. But the point is, the fact that it starts with water, I think that's a very straightforward reading of the text. So the evolutionary view in the Big Bang is completely messed up. So God created, I think, the galaxies, fully formed. Are there things that change out there? Yeah, it says in Job, even the stars are impure in your eyes. And I think that refers to things like supernovas where the stars explode.
Yeah, right. And that's the problem. Some who want to hold to a progressive view, for example, want to take that idea of fully formed and functioning and say created with the appearance of age. But that's kind of deceptive, because that isn't what happened. And the appearance of age is something that we determine by our experience, that says nothing about how old something actually is.
Right.
So you could have something that was created, I don't know, 14 seconds ago, that to me might look like it's 5,000 years old, but it's really only 14 seconds old.
Right.
So my view of it has nothing to do with how old it actually is. The Big Bang is an interesting one. If we said God spoke and bang, it existed, that might have some meaning. But as Jay pointed out, that's not until like the fourth day or so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Because
they use the Big Bang to explain the universe, right? The creation of the universe, and that came later.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes, but
So,
they also have a problem then if they're doing
Sure.
it from a evolutionary standpoint, or a source other than God, that in the beginning was nothing and it exploded into everything. That's the Big Bang theory. They still have to account for what exploded into everything.
Yeah.
Nothing doesn't explode into everything.
Either way, there's a problem.
Even
Yeah. No matter.
even Maria in Sound of Music knew that nothing comes from nothing and nothing ever will.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And
So
there's a song out there called something from nothing is nothing, or something like that.
Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever will.
He knows.
Nothing ever could.
There you go.
So somewhere in my youth or childhood, I must have done something good. Completely heretical song.
Very.
Salvation by works.
But,
Right, but they were right on nothing comes from nothing. That part was
that
cool.
one was fine. Yes, sir.
So, and it seems to me that if we look in Scripture, we find statements like that God stretched the universe out.
Mm.
Well, that's pretty interesting. That's not so much an explosion as he called something into existence and then stretched it out.
Let it be, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Pardon?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So how do we explain starlight and time? Because that's one of the things I alluded to earlier, and we've talked about this. You have to account for starlight and time, and that's a bugaboo, say, for Hugh Ross, is it takes a certain amount of time for starlight to travel to a point where we could see it, is the theory of this. And that light travels at 186,000 miles per second.
Yeah.
And so based on that, it would take this many billions of years to get to a place where it could be seeable, which assumes quite a few things. One is that light has always traveled at whatever speed it's traveling at now. And there seems to be evidence now that no, it has slowed down over time.
Interesting.
Right. Another is this, and this is kind of my guess on it, is that if God stretched out the universe and he had already created everything, he spoke it and existed, and then he stretched it out, is there some reason that the light that is coming from the stars could not have stretched with it as it stretched out the universe? Is that an answer? I don't know. Bible doesn't tell us that. It's just speculation on my part. But why couldn't God have done it that way?
Yeah, there are creation views similar to that, like Humphrey's basically taking the Big Bang and reverse in the sense that it's if we go backwards, that it's almost using Einstein's relativity and all that. It gets pretty complicated. I don't necessarily have a firm answer on that. And Jason Lyle basically says God travels instantly one way and then the other way, so that when you get the average, you get 186,000. So there are varying theories on that, but it is a tricky question. I will admit it.
Right. And that's the point. It's a tricky question. So we kind of get to the mechanics of the faith, which is, for me, and unfortunately, Jay and I talked about this before we started.
Mhm.
There's a view that he holds, and as it happens, I tend to agree with it. That others, I don't know where Dr. Williams is at on this question. We've never really discussed it. But that I would call the mechanics of the faith. How did God do stuff? And so I think we can take a view that we believe answers the questions the best.
Right.
And in our case, conforms with biblical teaching first and answers the questions the best second. But you don't have to believe them to be a Christian.
Right.
You can be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, all over there can be wrong. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, Norm Geisler had a view. I think he was closer to not Hugh Ross, but probably not a young earther. But it wasn't the big issue for him. The big issue was
Right.
God created everything from nothing. He spoke and it existed. That's pretty clear in Scripture.
Yes, the clear stuff is the clear stuff.
Yeah. I think, and again, I don't know where Don Williams is on this or others. I really like your bringing out the was Jesus a young earther question,
Mhm.
because he really does seem to speak directly and tie those issues together. The creation, boom. So you have them both connected together.
Yes. And
That makes
humanity. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions, things that those who are watching later can pick on us about?
Yikes.
No? Okay, good. Well, in that case, we're going to say for this week, we're going to say adios. And what are we doing next week so we can forewarn people?
This is about the difference in the ages, pre-flood versus post-flood. Why did the patriarchs live so long, and why did the ages drop so quickly afterwards?
Good. It's good stuff. So, all right. So with that, adios, everybody.
Hasta